Deor Mahasa Kharda, and welcome to the first video in Labhraidh Loingseach. That's witty for a number of reasons. I'll let you figure out why. No, I'm here with my friend Joe, and I'll let Joe say about himself what he wants to say about himself, but we'll start away and sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter who you are, actually.
It doesn't matter at all, like, as we'll get into it.
You don't matter, Joe, you don't matter.
Thanks, Christopher. Good friend.
So, man.
But I don't have a word of Irish, unfortunately. So.
No, that's what I was going to say, actually, that
yeah.
These people will be expecting this to be about Irish, but it won't be about Irish at all. Great way to start the series, but what we talk about first, because we met up the last day and we ended up talking about all sorts of things. So
yeah, it was interesting. Now we kind of got into life, really.
Yeah.
Very different points of view, I suppose.
We do indeed.
We could talk about free will, I'd say forever. I don't know if it's a good place
if we wanted to.
If we wanted to.
Well, actually, I should say that the reason I'm recording this is that the 19th of July, which will be tomorrow, is 3 months since the philosopher Daniel Dennett died, and it's also a month since the birthday of my Latin teacher, Vicky Janssens, who I made a final ramble about. So I'll probably tell more of Vicky's story in another video, maybe in a few days' time, but maybe euthanasia would be a good place to
Oh wow, yeah, I
start.
You sent me on Vicky's story from her husband, Garret, yes, by Garret, and I think it was on a talk show, TV talk show, or a radio show. Apologies, a radio show. Wow,
Heavy going.
That was heavy going now.
So yeah, well, I'll put Vicky's story in the description box. But basically, she was given a few months to live and decided to go back to her home, which she didn't consider home anymore, to avail of euthanasia.
Yeah, back to Luxembourg.
Mm-hmm. Or to Antwerp, yeah.
Antwerp, yes, apologies, Antwerp.
Where do you stand on it? No.
It's. I listened to it, and the first question that popped into my head was, what do you think? Where's your opinion? And the only answer I could come up with was, I don't know if I can have an opinion unless I was actually involved in the scenario. And of course, you have an opinion, like, and I do have an opinion, but it's there's so many. It was great to listen to it, because beforehand I thought I had a very strict opinion. I was like, this is where I stood with it.
Yeah. And
then you listen to it and you get the input from people who are actually involved in it.
But this is the thing. It's that a big problem, I think, is we think of things abstractly or just as ideas.
Yeah.
But when you see that these are problems that affect real people and people you care about, it could be your relative. Yeah. That softens people's cough a bit, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
No, Jesus, just complicated, and there are other problems. You know, might it affect the elderly? What kind of culture might it create? But
yeah,
you know,
the sociological problems that come out of it, like, yeah, for sure. It's, I mean, in terms of Vicky's case specifically, it's harsh. I mean, you can't make a call there either. I mean, the individual makes the call.
But you see, that's one of the big questions. Is that should people have? I can't even say it because the answer seems obvious to me in a way.
Yeah. Should
people get to decide how long they get to live if they you know it's This is complicated because one of the videos I'm going to make is about the etymology of euthanasia.
Yeah, what is the etymology of it? Quickly.
I was talking to you quickly now, come on.
I don't want to ruin your next video.
Well, you've ruined this one already. So. Well, the eu part in ancient Greek is actually related to so in Irish. Remember I mentioned that last year?
Yeah.
It goes back to Proto-Indo-European hisu, which they think might be related to the word hes, to be, where the English word is comes from actually. What is true is good. What exists is good. You know, the lie diverts us. The lie is bad, but not absolutely. And euthanasia is a word for death. So it means a good death.
Good. Okay.
But actually I was thinking about it because, of course, death, in most people's minds I would imagine, is a moment. Whereas you can have a bad life, a good dying. The death almost is instantaneous, it's momentane.
Yeah.
So it's actually a good, it's not about a good death, it's about a good dying.
Yeah, very different thing.
And when you're dying, like in Vicky's case, when you're dying of terminal cancer, she used to say it was like it was rats eating her from the inside out. Nobody knows, unless you're in that position yourself. You know, you don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
You know,
you can never know what that feels like.
So it's very strange to. That's why I find it strange when people are opposed to it on other people's behalf. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's a funny. There was a documentary about the Golden Gate Bridge survivors.
You'll have to explain that.
So it's a common place. Well, I don't know if it's a common place, but it's a place where people would jump off to kill themselves essentially at the Golden Gate Bridge, and these are people that somehow miraculously survived. Yeah. And essentially, I wouldn't say every single one of them, but the common theme, almost every single one of them, the common theme was like you get this person who's at a point where their life is so much suffering, and from their perspective is so bad that they come to a point of view that it's not worth living anymore, and that the only way to go on living is to kill themselves. And that sounds oxymoronic, contradictory, but in a way that's the mindset that's there. And every single one of them, almost, the moment they jumped off the bridge, they're all full of regret and trying to cling back onto the bridge and get back up. So to think that the action of enacting suicide transcends the suffering, in a sense, as in, like, in that moment you want to be alive more so than you want to be dead, and that's
but you see,
that's worse than the actual suffering that led them to the decision of killing themselves.
I can't imagine the terror at that moment.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that's an automatic animal response in that moment. Because once the emotions, once the wild horses of the emotions trot off, and you're back to your sane senses, you come back to the same reasoning that you might have wanted to do it again. You know, it's...
Yeah, I don't know what the return rate is, if there is a return rate, or the stats on that might be a weird thing. I also do understand that there's a complete massive difference between that scenario and Vicky's and euthanasia, and like Vicky's scenario, for example.
But you know, it's like we mentioned the last day when we bumped into each other, like the word depression. I actually think a much better word for it would be despair.
Despair, yeah.
You know, in Latin, I don't see.
Yeah.
There is no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, precisely.
You know, well, ultimately, there's no light at the end of the tunnel for all of us.
Yeah,
do you know what I'm saying?
We might disagree.
But the lack of light is closer to some people. The end of the tunnel is closer to some people.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, it's an oncoming train. So you think, you know, I'm going to get off the track sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I can see that point of view. Maybe we'll go to that contradiction, because I think that will lead us down that discussion better. Like that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. I think it depends on how you look at it, but like if we maybe we agree, find where we agree in terms of like life is suffering. Like there's no getting away from the misery or the suffering that's involved in life. You don't get to go in life and get to just play games like a child all day and enjoy every moment of it. Like there's always hardship, there's always responsibility, there's always suffering, there's always a want or a desire to do better, maybe, or to feel better.
There's a nice shanachal. Ní huasal na he shall, ach huas shall is he shall.
Right.
It's not a matter of being noble or ignoble, but being up a while and down a while.
Right.
You know, ups and downs. Ups and
downs.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But I was going to say actually just about the something like that, jumping off a bridge, that's different when you actually have a chance, where there's actually a shall, there's a moment of time between the initiation of the act
for sure,
and the result.
For sure.
Whereas in Vicky's case, she was such a funny woman. She was so wise, so witty. Both those words are related, actually, etymologically. But like the last thing she said was a joke. They gave her the muscle relaxant, and finally, there was a bit of relief. I could get used to this.
Yeah. That was very sad. It was hard.
It is sad, but funny to the last. It's a strange thing to say about something so serious like that, but I was actually so proud of her. Just the strength of character to get up in the morning and say, today is the day. I know people, that happens to other people in a bad way, I think, but
there's definitely a massive difference between despair and what you described there.
But you see, maybe it's despair as an emotion and despair as a thought, and I think people mix up nowadays, especially Americans. People nowadays I see say I feel when they mean I think. Now, of course, they're like that, hand in glove with each other, but but I think in Vicky's case it was despair as a thought rather than a feeling. Maybe that's that's maybe makes no sense, but it wasn't a rash decision on her part. She was a wise, intelligent woman.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Vicky. I didn't know Vicky at all, and I only listened to that short talk. So I don't want to say too much out of my place. I don't want to make comments on.
No, she was so open-minded. It was, it's a pity in a way that it's something I regret actually, that I didn't, get her opinions about it. Well, on record, But
did you ever talk to her about it?
The last time I met her, she just spoke about the illness and heavy going, but anyway,
It's a tough one. It's a tough topic, isn't it?
But I mean, the way things are going, it looks like it's going to come in Ireland. So.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, definitely. There was an advisory committee put together, and
okay.
You see, I can relate to people who have sociological objections.
Yeah.
But it at the end of the day, it comes down to the question that has an objective answer.
Yeah.
What is good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or are we to make slaves of each other? And no, you have to suffer. You have to suffer.
There's nothing good about tyranny.
That's bizarre.
There's nothing good about tyranny. And the moment you impose your will onto somebody else, that is tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
I think anyone in their right mind would say there's nothing good about tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you can make the argument that would be the argument for good. I don't see how those two things fit together.
It's interesting, and this maybe brings us into the another part of one of the things we intended on talking about will.
Yeah.
One of the last public appearances that Daniel Dennett made was a debate on free will with Robert Sapolsky.
Okay.
Now, I'm all on Robert Sapolsky's side,
Right.
But Daniel Dennett says we do have free will, but actually what he means by free will is self-control.
Yes.
So, as they say at the start of any argument, define your terms so that we know that we're going from the same departure point, but they had two different things in mind, I think.
Yeah.
Self-control.
Maybe had similar ideas or same thought processes, but just different words for it. and it's hard sometimes, or different definitions for different words. And
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The like a definition, finis, is a limit.
Okay.
So you have to make sure that your definition overlaps with your interlocutor's definition.
Yes, for sure.
You know,
for sure.
I mean, the whole point, of dialectic, that you come to an agreement.
Yeah.
Which is actually something that has bizarrely gone wrong, I think, in nowadays, today's culture.
It's about winning the conversation nowadays, and it's like it's not a positive way forward. Like, it's a conversation is about the topic at hand and furthering the topic at hand and where, like, in order for there to be a conversation or a confrontation or discussion. I was thinking about confrontation today. Correct me if I'm wrong now. Does that come from the Latin to face to face, to confront?
Con means together and front.
Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry, that came up in a as we're talking about it came up in conversation with confronting children. When you're confronting a child, it's like you drop your head level to be eye to eye with them, so face to face, but completely separate topic there. But yeah, like the point of a discussion is to better the topic at hand. For example, there's a topic at hand, or the thing that we're almost confronting the thing together, rather than like narcissistically trying to win to boost your ego. And like if, for example, if I came into a conversation or you came into a conversation and you're confronting the thing at hand and I'm boosting my ego, or vice versa, then you're at nothing. Like,
I think it's the way that people imagine what conversation is, or that it's almost that they think about like loggerheads, that it's one vessel against another.
Yeah.
Whereas actually what it should be, I think, even with people you disagree with, or
even more so with people you disagree with.
Exactly. It's more like you're both rowing the boat together to get to the destination of the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think people visualize or imagine conversations like that, or
and like that's where peace stems from. Peace, like, there's always going to be people who disagree with each other, and it's necessary, because if no one disagrees with each other, then it's just all one motive, like, isn't it?
Well, that'd be alright if everyone was right.
That would be heaven on earth, maybe. You could say.
But I often joke that, like, where two people disagree, at least one of them is wrong.
And probably both.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, like, learning to row that boat with people you disagree with, or learning to row the boat together is how you find peace. It's like when you both want to get to the same destination, you both get over your differences and find your similarities in search of that.
Yeah. Well, it's about finding out what's true, I think. But jumping back to the will thing, actually, it's interesting that to say that I like something in Scottish Gaelic is tailliam, but that word tail in Irish means will.
Okay.
That you will something, that you're inclined towards it. I just find that interesting. The idea, of course, a definition of a word or an etymology doesn't make it so.
Yes.
But it's just a little. It's a little light that helps you navigate the field of thought.
Yeah. And it's a pointer to where it came from and what it meant throughout history, and then you can contextualize that with the times.
Yeah.
And it's a much better indicator, rather than taking the word into the context of now. You get a better idea of what it meant at the time, and then you get an idea of what that would mean. You can abstract it into the time of what it is now. It's probably far more useful, rather than literally taking it and be like, oh, well, we know better now.
Well, it's interesting, because I'm very much of the opinion that, like, linguistics and psychology are, there's an interface that they meet somewhere. With semantics. I mean, a word in my mind is, or like language, is thought outing.
Yes. Yes.
It can be by sound, it can be by gesture, but which is why I actually dislike the word thought outing, or language.
Okay.
Because etymologically,
that's weird.
it means tongue.
Okay.
But I think quite a lot about sign language.
Okay.
Maybe one of the interviews I do actually was a friend of mine who's a native sign language speaker.
Wow.
You know, a native signer.
Yeah.
But it's about thought outing. So then it becomes about the thoughts, and that's of course where psychology comes in.
Yes. Yeah.
Your mental frames. What do you have in your frames?
Yeah. You can't self-regulate yourself. Of course, like you have to self-regulate yourself within reason, but like you can't live in isolation. Like you go insane like if you're isolated. Like the worst form of punishment we have is isolation in prisons. Like you go insane, and in order to regulate yourself with, you have to be able to express what you're thinking to other people, and whatever form of communication that is, and I suppose to be able to articulate yourself in whatever manner is best. That's how you regulate your thoughts, and then people's responses to those is it's how they regulate their thoughts and your thoughts together.
Well, that's the thing. You see, it's like that. It's almost like the what they call it, the hive mind, is it, or the hive brain? That it's almost like that. Every single mind is part of one greater mind.
Yeah.
You know, and that. Like if there's like a brain itself, you know, that if there's no pathway between those two points, you know, it's about creating neural pathways inside the brain, or say intracerebrally and intercerebrally, you know. But about this idea of frames, we'll say, you know, it's like maps. We need people. You know, it's like etymology, using it as fuel for thought.
Yeah.
You know, it's like people talk about, it's good to have other languages because you get another vision of the world. That's only if you if you turn on the light of those words and look back into the dark past and see what the word meant. You know, you can have other languages and not actually reflect. on that. But it's important, I think, to think of thoughts as maps that correspond to something outside the brain.
Yes, yeah.
You know, or
well, there's a form of learning languages. It's called what's it? It's acquisition, but there's a full phrase for it. It's like learning through acquisition. Maybe that's what it's called. But it's like rather than going, like, let's say I wanted to learn Spanish or whatever, or let's speak Irish, because you might have a vocabulary there. and I'll go, okay, how do I say the word headphones in Irish? And then you tell me whatever that is. Your moment to shine.
Well, probably the official word, probably like headphone or something like that.
But let's pick a non-official word, which would help articulate the point. Like if you were to describe headphones in Irish.
Cúsáin is the cúsátar.
Cúsáin. Perfect. So, rather than me going headphones, understanding that in English. So, image, English headphones, Irish. It's like you're much better off, like, acquisitions where, like, point to the thing and you say Cúsáin.
Yes, yeah.
And then I map Cúsáin to the thing.
Cúsáin. Well, this is what close.
Yeah. So, I map the word Cúsáin to the thing rather than translating English to Irish, because once you're translating, you're essentially expressing yourself in the same manner you express in English, just with a new vocabulary, and you may as well be a made-up vocabulary at that stage.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what's happening to Irish, unfortunately. Well, Irish, it's not really Irish. It's kind of, you know,
whatever you want to call it.
But that's it. Like, look at the object itself, the referent, and then see how you would. Then find a reference for that referent, and then find a word for how is that described. I think people should start with the description first, rather than just translating words.
Yes, yeah.
But anyway, that's it.
That's a completely.
Yeah.
We won't solve that one today anyway.
But going back maybe to more about free will.
Yeah.
You do think we have free will?
Yeah, I think we agree a lot more than we disagree here. But I do think we have free will.
That's no good, Joe. That's no
good. I do think we have free will.
That's bad for views.
I do think we have free will. Like, I think so.
You've no other choice.
I think we make our own decisions. I think we. Yeah.
we do make decisions. But that's not to say that we weren't bound to make those decisions.
But you see, my argument there is then it's not a decision. It's an inevitable outcome.
Well, it is, but you can still call that the moment of that inevitable outcome a decision. It's a gateway that you find yourself at.
Yeah.
That's the decision.
Yeah, and you can navigate that in any manner that you wish. And if you navigate it poorly, your life reflects it. And I think the outcomes of your life reflect your decisions. And I think you have I think you can make your own decisions. And I think that I think the hope that comes with that is that you have control over the outcome of your life to the extent that better decisions make your life overarchingly better. Now that's not to say look, catastrophes happen, things happen that are out of our control, storms come or whatever way you want to phrase it. Awful things happen to people who you definitely don't deserve it. But for the most part, you can choose to get up and go to work in the morning, or you can not go to work and your life will change very drastically.
But you see, when we talk about decision and choice at that level, I would call that, without having thought about it too much, like the illusion level. The illusions are real. As in they are real things in the brain.
Yeah.
They don't correspond to something outside the brain. The illusion is real. So choices exist, decisions exist, but we were always bound to make those decisions and choices. And so
maybe I don't know if I understand you correctly then, because I feel like that's who we are. That's the level at which we operate. We don't operate at the transcendent level of that.
At the illusion level.
No, as in the illusion level is like the level I just described of the decisions we make at the gateway, is it?
Well, that is what the decision is, I think, actually. It is the gateway.
But the transcendent of that, as in like whatever level is above that in terms of what happens outside of your control, even your interests, or even your emotional response, or the emotional response you have to something. All those things are essentially out of your control. Now you can't change the emotional response, but you can change how you react to the emotional response that occurs. And I think we don't operate at. Sorry.
You said we can change.
So we can't change the emotional response. So if someone gives out to me and if something happens, let's say you get upset for some reason, and that thing that happens that upsets you, you can't change the fact that you got upset. You just get upset because you get upset. But you can adapt the manner in which you react when you get upset. For example, when you're a child, upsets turn into tantrums when you're like 2 years of age, and then hopefully by the age of 4 you're no longer throwing tantrums, and definitely by the age of 24 you're no longer throwing tantrums. And like that's something that has to be taught to children, and that's something you have to learn into adulthood, is how to deal with your emotional responses. And that's how you treat trauma, like essentially, is you change your behaviours around your emotional responses to things.
Well, our behaviours are changed, but again, you were always bound. In some ways, there's great peace in whatever happens to someone, no matter how good or bad. When something happens, that's the way it always had to be.
The problem, the fundamental problem I have with this essentially is I don't see how that doesn't lead to nihilism. I don't see how you don't just go, well, that's life. What's the point? What is the point?
The point of what?
Of living.
Well, right. To reword that a second, just so that I can. Maybe I shouldn't be rewording it, but it's like the sorry, I'm after thinking of a story.
Go for it.
I was teaching one time, and I went to point at something on the page, and I said, what's and I forgot what I was going to say, and the student was a little 8-year-old lad, cousin of mine, and I said, what's the meaning of life? Huh? So I said, we ended up having a conversation then about the meaning of life. So he came in again a few weeks later and he said, I asked my teacher the same question that you asked me. What question? What's the meaning of life? And I said, what did she say? She didn't know either. But actually, that it's a silly question, because at least the way I think about it, and again using etymology as fuel for thought, there is no meaning where there is no mind. They're etymologically related. So only minds have meaning. You know, like we of course it's normal English to say, what's the meaning of that word? But actually I would consider it more cognitively correct, more accurate, closer to reality, to say what was meant by that word.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Because it doesn't. Almost like when you say what's the meaning of that word, you trap the person to a definition that's almost outside their control. Whereas essentially what you're trying to do in conversation is comprehend what the person is trying to express. That person has an image in their head of what they're trying to explain, and you want to get a close image of what they're saying. You want to as close as possible. So it's like I understand what you're saying. I can re-articulate what you're saying back to you to your satisfaction.
Well, it's actually like that. If meaning and mind, or mind maps, and if you replace the word, like word, you know what was meant by that word, as an outed thought or an outed mind map. You know, you're describing your map. It's the whole idea of comparing maps. But there's no point comparing maps without a reference to actually what the map maps.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is where people can't agree, and this is why it's so important. I think, you know, this postmodernist thought that, you know, nothing is true. Is that true?
Yeah, there's no such. Yeah, there you go. Like, you know, to say nothing is true, to get someone to agree with nothing is true would get them to agree. You can't agree, but you can't agree unless they believe it's also true.
That's a truth statement.
That's the truth. Yeah.
You know?
And then, but see, that's what postmodernism is about then, because essentially you don't have communication for agreeance' sake. You have a communication for winning and losing, and you always have to be the winner. Because put yourself in a world where every conversation is a battle. It's a winning and losing. Like, that's a scary place to live. And everyone's alone.
Yeah.
Everyone is alone, and whenever someone acts, because this is the way you'd view it from that point of view, is whenever someone acts like they're being genuine and caring, that's their tool for winning. You'd have serious trust issues. You could never trust anyone. And there's no space for love there. No one ever loves anyone in that world. So no real relationships. Even between a mother and a child, there's no real relationships.
Yeah. Well, of course, depends what you mean by relationship, but it's just
in the general sense.
It's a nasty way of looking at the world. I think. You know, all right. It's irrelevant, I think, to just saying decent people. You know,
it's surprisingly very common philosophy, maybe. I think it's much more common maybe in my generation and younger.
Well, it's because I think because it denies knowledge, it removes the sense of obligation that one should be knowledgeable. You know, and that's why people like it, because it frees them of the model objective.
Yes, to make good decisions, Christopher.
Well, it's interesting because we might do another thing of this after if you listen to the Robert Sapolsky and
for sure.
Daniel Dennett debate, that you know, this idea of responsibility and fairness to Daniel Dennett, he knew the etymology of respond, like respondo, or like I put respondo, I put back.
Yeah.
But of course we can put back. You know, like fragoroch in Irish actually comes from fregar, that you can answer back.
Okay.
Frig means against. But all you're doing there is describing a physical action. You know, it's like, I find it very interesting how we, sorry, this is going to sound much wafflier than I wanted to, but how we subjectivize objective terms, or either how we apply an emotion to a description of time, of change in time and space. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So like to discriminate, or like to decide, for example, if I'm not mistaken, I cut away.
Okay. Yes.
Or like to discriminate,
Yeah.
right? I like krisis is in Greek is a decision.
Yeah.
But that siar is related to the Irish word cíar as sieve.
Okay.
You know, it's the idea of sieving apart.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and actually, this is where like discernment. That's again the siar.
Yeah.
And that's what it means to be intelligent. You know that you have more mental categories, that you don't just see it as, that you don't just have these lumps of thought.
Yeah.
And a million things thrown in.
The finer your abstraction is, the better. Like.
Yeah. You know.
That is how IQ tests work, isn't it? It's about abstraction tests essentially, is what they really are. And then the finer your abstraction, the finer you can. I don't essentially know. I don't know the exact details of them, but it's something to do with abstraction.
But it's interesting actually to use that as an example. Like, if we say, "Oh, that's very abstract," that's usually meant in a negative sense. Even the words negativity and positivity in themselves.
I feel like when people say that's very abstract, it's kind of that sense of it's so abstract that it's out in the air. It's kind of lost its concrete grounding to humanity. Like, as in, you can abstract something to a farcical level where it's like it's lost its connection between humanity and what it was trying to depict. Like, sometimes you have dreams, like some of the dreams are crazy, like, and sometimes they're just so abstract you can't ground them to a real time and place or something that you could relate to really, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Like, maybe that's, I would believe it's necessary for that level of abstraction, but that doesn't mean it's useful to most people in a specific time and place. It's probably, let me take God and Jesus as an example here. Like, if you take you're looking for this one. So if you take God and if you take spirituality in general, spirituality tends to float into the air. Like, it's too abstract. Like, this idea of an ultimate being. So if you look at God as the ultimate thing, it's not even a being. It's a thing. Like, I don't know if you could define him. Like, if it's almost indefinable. And we have this folklore or fairy tale or whatever you want to call it, of this depiction of a bearded man in the sky. But I think anyone with two senses who really takes this seriously doesn't picture him as a bearded man in the sky. But why do we have a bearded man in the sky? Because you need something tangible to grasp onto. You need something you can understand. Then you take Jesus, for example, who is, within the book, is claimed to be the Son of God, but also within Christianity is claimed to be God. It's probably the defining factor of Christianity. Now, I'll probably be corrected by Christians here, but I'm pretty sure one of the two most important things is, A, you believe he rose again, he died and actually rose again, and two is you actually believe he is God. That's one of the differentiating factors between Christianity and another religion that would have Christ as a figure. And maybe if you take, I was only thinking about this the other day, maybe if you take God as the ultimate good, let's just replace God with the concept of the ultimate good. Doesn't matter what word you use. Really doesn't matter what word you use. Maybe etymologically speaking, there's a much better word.
It's interesting actually that people often say that, or I think that the words God and good are related. They're not. God comes from an Indo-European word "go," which means to pour something out. It was a libation to a god.
Right.
Do you know?
Okay.
So they're not related, but you see, at the metaphoric level, that's what I think a lot of religion is. It's metaphors mixed with mythology. So metaphors gone wrong. Do you know?
I don't disagree with you there. I don't know if it's gone wrong.
But that's in relation to what was trying to be expressed by the metaphor in the first place. You know, like I mentioned the last day, that again, thinking in etymology is a meta, across, and
Yeah.
for, or por in ancient Greek,
Yeah, yeah.
to a bearer,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, Lucifer, carrier of light,
Okay.
you know, so metaphor is you're carrying a cross from something tangible for something touchable, concrete, to something else.
Yeah.
Or actually, you're maybe the opposite. You're going from something
else to something
intangible to try to describe it or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But something always gets lost, no doubt, or usually
Of course.
during the carrying across.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is what has gone.
That's interesting actually, because if you believe that's true, you can't simultaneously believe that. I'll finish this point first, and I'll come back to it. So, if you imagine then Jesus is Christ, so we'll take Jesus is God. We'll take that belief system as true, just for the argument's sake. What you've got is an archetypical individual of how you should behave in the world in order to follow the book that God has outlined. This would be like the concept of being a Christian, shall we say. Now, if you were to act like Jesus, you would be the ultimate good that a human could be.
Assuming
that God is the ultimate good.
Yes.
It's all predicated on these assumptions. 100%. Yeah. So the point there is that's the figure in which you could behave like. That's the tangibility of the intangible. God being the intangible, Christ being the Son of God, who is God, and He is the tangible. And now we have something to be in awe of and imitate that brings us closer to God, to be real cliche about things. Now what's interesting is, if I agree with your point about that something is always lost in the transfer over, which I think I do agree with.
I wouldn't say that it's always, but I think it tends to.
Yeah. Then you're left with this idea of, when you go from the abstract level of God to the concrete level, or the more tangible level of this infallible individual, which is still ungraspable, you've surely lost something in between. So as a result, you can't believe that Christ is God, and then as a result the Trinity breaks down, as a result Christianity breaks down, which is an interesting argument to it. It's actually a very interesting argument to it.
Well, it's just that if like, you have to work from the tangible and go the other way, in a sense, rather, you know, or, like, it's interesting that, like,
I would argue that. I would argue that, because dreams is a big one for me, and art is another big one. It's like, it's almost like, and we actually talked about this the other day. Like, when you're writing a piece or music or songs, I don't know if you've got songs and pieces. You're writing a piece.
Piece of shit.
Not at all. When you're writing music though, or when you get into that, I don't want to use that flow state, because I feel like that's a big, what would you say, big cliched at the moment. I think it's going to miss the point. But when you get into that zone, like zone is another word that's gone. But when you get into that flow, again, another word. But when you get maybe all these words are just correct, and I just worded it wrong. But when you get into that, there's a moment where you it's almost like you transcend life when you're doing art correctly.
You see, that's a metaphor. What are you talking about?
Exactly. It's you can't tangibilize it. You can't tangibilize it, but at the end you have something tangible, which is the beautiful thing about art. It's like you go into this intangible state that transcends tangibility.
But you see, it is tangible. Tango in Latin means I touch.
Yeah.
You know, you can touch it, because the state that you're in is a physical thing. It can be observed. You know.
But it's almost like it's intangible for you in the moment, because you can't.
You don't have access to that information. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the moment you start thinking is the moment you doubt yourself. The moment you doubt yourself, it's over. You're out of that place. That's what it is. It's a place of zero doubt. There's no doubt. There's no thoughts. And dreams are the same thing, except I would imagine there's a lot of sleep neurologists who would drastically disagree with what I'm about to say. But
let's have it.
Matt Walker, hit me up. But sleep is like when you dream, it's, I don't know if I tend to dream quite a lot, and I've had a period of the last few years where I had a lot of intense dreams, But I find like I've started analysing my dreams as well. I started journaling and analysing my dreams. And I found like there's been some really unsettling dreams I've had. And when I've digged into them, I have found answers to my life that have changed my psychological state drastically. By digging into these. And it's like, I didn't articulate those dreams. There's something that precedes articulation that gave me those dreams, and then I had the ability to articulate them. And so I think the abstract precedes the articulation. I don't think we think first and then abstract out. And I think we can abstract out from articulated thoughts, but I think the abstract occurs first.
But again, abstract, trago, like drag, draw actually.
Yeah.
I pull away.
Yeah.
So you have to have the object first. You have to have something physical first before you drag away.
That's the articulated version of the word abstract. So, how did we get to the point where we were able to articulate things well enough that we could do that? The thing that precedes it, the thing that precedes thought, the thing that precedes like interest. Why are you interested in what you're interested in?
But these are all just physical processes. You know, it's like when people, when we say to someone, "Why did you do that?"
Yeah. What
people want is what I would call and I hate this word, narrative. They want a narrative explanation. You know, they want a story.
Yeah.
To put it in plain English.
We think in stories. We comprehend life in stories.
But those stories mightn't necessarily be true. When people say, "Why did you do that?" they say, "Give me a story," rather than. They're not expecting to have a description of your biological priors.
Yeah.
That's the thing, actually. Like when people say "why" to me, I translate that in my head as what were the priors? What were the previous moments? That's what "why" means, you know. But that's a good example of what I mean by the subjectivization or the emotionalization of a term. They're not looking for an objective answer.
Yeah.
What were the physical states that led you to this moment?
Yeah. They're trying to see, I suppose, the most effective way to communicate is paint a picture in somebody's head. You know, you can paint a picture through a story that articulates what you're trying to, the prior thoughts that you had in a manner that they understand best, because not only do you have to give them the prior thoughts, you also have to paint the picture of the emotional responses you were having to the thoughts you were having, and as a result why you made the decisions you made. It's very different than the logical. We're not computers. It's not like a script where they're like, here's my Python script and you run it and it's going to be the exact same, and here's my Python script and you run it, it's going to be the exact same. There's not a file transfer here.
You see, I would, on some level I would disagree. And it's interesting that Glorious Accidents documentary, that one of the criticisms levelled against Daniel Dennett was this mechanistic view, that deriving from the Enlightenment. But it's very interesting, I might as well make the point now that one of the objections was that made against him was that why Joe we're live, folks, we're live. That one of the objections was, why do we speak about it as if we're robots? But Rupert Sheldrake, who made the objection, didn't know this, I presume. But it's very interesting that we speak about ourselves as robots. The word robot was coined in the play Rur by Oriwar by Karl Čapek, a Czech author.
Okay.
Like robot in several Slavic languages means to work or to drudge or to work. He said, why not talk about it as organisms instead? You know, that only robots or only humans make robots, or make machines. He said, why not speak of it as organisms? But it's interesting because the word organism goes back to Proto-Indo-European werg, which is so org in Greek, but werg in English is the word work, and that's what robot means. So if you've put those three words together as a Venn diagram, what does robot what's the difference between a robot, a worker, and the physical sense of somebody that does work? Robot, worker, and organism, or organ, an organ of the body, something that does something.
Yeah, okay.
So in the physical sense, we are, or in a more abstract sense, in a broader sense, we are computers. We are things that put things together.
Yes, yeah. Maybe the point I'm trying to make is we all have different operating systems.
Yes.
That's what maybe it is. And I can't just send you a file because your operating system doesn't read my file. So part of it, my operating system is I have to be able to translate my file into. I have to understand your operating system, translate my file into a story that works in your operating system. Send that story or send that file, and then you have to process it, regulate whether you fully process it or not, and then we're constantly trying to comprehend how each other's operating systems will comprehend until we go, yes, you understand what I'm saying. Maybe it's in a different language. Maybe you run Python and I run Java, but
I don't get you.
Sorry, Python's a
I'm
program.
Aha!
You got me. So I'm going to finish now anyway. Python's a scripting language, Java's an object-oriented programming language. They're different. Yeah, maybe that's the difference. Maybe. So we're not all the same robot, and we're all different robots, and a lot of that comes down back to the emotional responses to things.
But it's to understand. I think the coming back to free will, that the world is a much nicer place, much friendlier place, kinder place, when you realise that we are all robots, and some people, through no fault of their own, have just been programmed in the wrong place, in the wrong way. It makes the world a much kinder place. It is very interesting.
I think it's a very dangerous tactic.
Why?
Because there's people out there who have ill intentions and will do ill will to you and enjoy it. That's a real thing.
It is. But
if you're not prepared for those people, they will ruin your life.
But that doesn't mean that you can't be prepared for it. But at the same time, of course, the emotional responses to,
Yeah.
But once we're a bit more magnanimous or big-souled, that you think, okay, this person did this. The whole point is like punishing that person.
No, I'm not. That's not my argument.
Yeah.
I'm saying that we have to be able to put ourselves together enough that we can organize our thoughts, post our emotional responses in a manner that helps us navigate the world I don't want to say in a manner, but in a manner that's better for us and the people around us.
Yes.
And that's a choice.
So I mean the fear of punishment definitely has a role in
of course.
In how people treat us, or maybe how we treat others.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know, it's there's no reason to fear or to reject the fact that we are workers, organisms, robots.
Yeah. I just still don't see how we don't have free will. I don't see how that just leads to
free from what?
Like free within reason, as in I don't mean like we can play outside the boundaries of reality. Like I think there's things that transcend us, and there's things that like as in this couch is here, and we sit on this couch, and I can't think to myself I'm gonna float through this couch down to the ground and then fly up into the air. Maybe in a dream, but
again, and as Daniel Dennett makes the point, hallucinations are real. They are real things in the brain.
They are.
But what I'm saying is the map. The map is real, but it doesn't correspond to anything outside the brain.
But it doesn't interact with other people. Your hallucination isn't real to anyone else.
Yes.
So it's not real in the sense of a collective agreement of what's real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we need people to stay sane and regulate ourselves.
Well, it's also why we have to have a concept of what truth is.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is why postmodernism is so dangerous.
And it's not true.
Is that true? But yeah.
Yeah, I think we agree on this. I don't know.
That's no good.
I don't see where I just don't see where our difference is.
But why do you think we have free will then?
I don't.
From what?
I don't. But it's maybe. See, we agree on what will is, and you can't shoot like that. The thing that wills you to do something. It's almost like a possession. It's almost like there's something that precedes your actions. That is like something willed you to start this podcast. Something willed you to play the piano. Something willed you to whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's
well, it's interesting. Well, yeah, something caused me to do it. Yeah.
But like there's a want. There's a desire. There's not a desire. I wouldn't use the word desire. I'd use the word interest.
Yeah, but in a way, it doesn't matter what word we use. But they're all.
You'd really shoot yourself in the foot there now if you said. Huh? You'd really shoot yourself in the foot there if you said it doesn't matter what word you use.
Exactly. Well, it does. But they're all. It just. They're physical. You know, it's they're physical moments. They're physical things. Why we have an interest, why we have a like, why we have a want. Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. Sorry, I won't go into the what want. It originally meant just a lack.
Okay.
You know.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense.
So then, if there's a vacuum as such, you get pulled into that vacuum.
That's actually very interesting because it changes the description of the word want in Bible quite drastically, which is
waste, not want.
Very, very, very interesting. Waste, not want. Yeah.
You know.
But I still think we make our own decisions, as in
we do, but that's just the description of the gate that we find ourselves at. We go through the gate. The decision has been. We make the decision. You know.
But it sounds like you're just saying life is easy. You just don't think, and then it happens. That's my understanding of.
But it does happen. But it's like, it's you know, like the analogy I gave the last day, that it's like playing a video game, or to think that you're playing a video game rather than watching a video game.
Yeah.
You know.
But you are playing a video game when you're playing a video game. Like you can think, I want the character to jump, and then you can press jump. How do you learn to play piano? In order to learn to play piano, you cognitively make decisions about specifically how you want to move your finger, and then you relate the sounds back to the movement of your finger. And
yeah, but what caused me to want me to move that finger? Right?
That's a great. Now we're asking the right question.
But that's
now we're at like interest. What sparks interest?
But that's biology. You know. Is chemistry, is physics, is mathematics. Do you know? That's
where I think you get into a theistic viewpoint of the world.
Why?
Because there's a I don't know how you traverse the unknown without having faith in something, without believing in something.
Without having a hypothesis of something. Again, just the way that I think about the word belief.
Yeah.
You know, like Glaube, Glaube being related to Liebe, love. It's something, even in Irish belief, Cleduv is something your your heart does.
Yeah.
Rather than your brain.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I don't think belief happens here.
Well, it does. That's the thing.
It does, but it doesn't. Like, as people say, they believe things all the time, but they don't really believe in anything.
Well, it's thinking that your mind map corresponds to something outside your brain.
Yes.
Without ever looking outside your brain.
But you have to do that at times. There's times where you can't, where you have to just go, well, this is the first. Look, the first time you do anything is the first time you do anything. Do you know what I mean? As in, like, in order to have done something 10 times, you have to have done it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you do it for the first time, it's blind.
Just like we're doing here, folks.
Yeah. And it's, you know,
we're doing it blind.
But like you have to have a map that you believe in that's going to get you through it.
Yeah, but not to take too many steps forward.
Well, I mean, look, like,
into the dark.
That's where you weigh up your risk versus reward benefit. That's where, like, you know, you don't do stupid things all the time. Like, you know, you don't, like, as in, that's where you just gauge, you know, how much do I trust this process, or how, like that's life. That's the decisions you make in life. Some people step too far into the dark, and you know, you don't swim out to sea for 100 minutes and then.
But people do.
And have never swam before. People do, but it's probably not a wise decision.
But I mean, metaphorically like,
speaking,
you know, yeah.
It's not. That doesn't make it a wise decision.
No, certainly not.
But it makes it a decision nonetheless.
Yeah, but it's to make sure that people don't come to that decision gate. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's they're free. They're free to make that choice.
They're not, but they have to make it anyway.
They're not. I understand this, as in, regardless, once you have a thought and you're at the gates in terms of what decision you're going to make, you have to make a decision one way or another. Because once you think something, you can't unthink it, and unsee what you've seen.
Well, again, you can forget.
You can forget, but, like, for example, like, if you say no to something, it's not the same as not being asked something.
Mm-hmm.
So the outcome is the same, but the predecessor was different. So if you say no to something, you still don't do it, and if you're never asked to do something, you don't do it. But saying no is making a decision, whereas not doing it, you never had to make a decision.
Mm.
So I understand that once you didn't get to choose to make the decision, but you do get to make the decision.
All right, but that's only describing a state that you find yourself in.
Yes.
What really matters, you know, all these philosophers talk about free will and consciousness and where does it all come from.
Yeah.
They're actually of non-primary importance. Primary importance is what's good and how do we get it? How do we get there?
But if you ask the question, how do we get there, then you have to believe that you can make choices to get there. Because otherwise, what's the point of the conversation?
Well, you needn't, how would I say, belief in the sense of thinking something is true without evidence that it's true. You can know what is good. In my mind, it's an objective thing.
Yeah.
Do you know?
But like you know something is good, and then you do the action that corresponds with that know, or I would call a belief. So that's when you live by your beliefs, and you have to make the decision and that's the reason I'm saying. The reason I insisted to the decision is because it's not easy.
But it is the decision. But that's just.
It's not inevitable though.
But you see, that's what I'm saying. There's no point just describing it as a moment in time. It's then, is it good? Did you make the right decision?
Yes.
Did you make a good decision?
Yeah.
Good decision.
Yeah.
You know, or actually, sorry, you know, that's a polar question. Did you make the right decision? It's much better to ask, I think, non-polar questions.
Yeah.
Information questions.
Yeah.
How good was that decision?
Yeah.
You know.
You essentially just break you
it becomes more nuanced.
Yeah, it becomes more nuanced. You get to sieve out and you abstract a little bit more from it.
Speaking of abstract, I'm going to abstract myself out of this because I have to get a bus.
Yes, yeah. Pleasure, Christopher.
But I mean, you know how good.
On Porter Road.
That's how good he is. Oh, nice.
The only Irish I know.